Hey guys, my name is Justice with Tomorrow's Filmmakers and 90dayfilmmaker.com, and I am here with our newest team member, Emmaus Vanderbilt, to talk about our top gimbal tips and tricks. Now, Emmaus has been shooting weddings full time since he was just 16 years old and has been using gimbals pretty much that entire time, thus the reason why I brought him on here to share our knowledge with you guys. Now, if you haven't already seen it, we already created a video called Top Glide Cam Tips and Tricks, which you can see by clicking right here or in the description below, and we definitely suggest you go watch that as well, because all of those tips and tricks can apply when using a gimbal. But with gimbals becoming increasingly popular, we wanted to make a video specifically geared towards this piece of equipment that we both use for pretty much every single shoot.
And the good thing is that all these tips and tricks can be applied with pretty much any gimbal that you have. If you have a DJI Osmo for your cell phone or Ronin S for your DSLR, either way you can apply all these steps to your gimbals and improve the quality of your projects immediately. Now, even if you have a gimbal other than the ones we mentioned, like the Zhiyun Crane or some off-brand gimbal, the same tips still apply. So let's go ahead and jump into our top gimbal tips and tricks, with tip number 1 being to make sure your gimbal is properly balanced. This one step is where most people tend to roll their eyes since they think that it's a super basic step, but they also don't understand how important it is and why most people aren't getting smooth shots. If your glide cam isn't balanced properly, it won't even be able to stand upright. But if your gimbal isn't balanced, it will still look like it's perfectly balanced and ready to film, and that's why people ask me why their footage isn't smooth, and that's because most of the time it's their gimbal that is unbalanced and they don't even know it because they're looking at it and it looks just fine. But if your gimbal isn't properly balanced, your motors will have to work even harder to balance your camera, which will drain your battery life and won't eliminate all the bumps and shakes. Again, even though the camera looks properly balanced, just by glancing at it, you can clearly see which one is balanced by looking at the footage. Now, we could spend forever going over how to balance your gimbal, but we have many videos inside our full academy on how to balance every single gimbal, all the way from the cheap stabilizers to more expensive ones. In summary, just be sure that you take that extra time to make sure your gimbal is balanced, because that can determine if your shot is going to be smooth or shaky.
Tip number 2 is turning the gimbal, not the joystick. Now, most gimbals, such as the Ronin S, come with a joystick, and the joystick will actually control the camera and allow you to move it in any direction that you want. It's a really great feature, and it's the most obvious thing to use to turn your camera, but it will also ruin your shot. One of the downsides of a gimbal compared to a glide cam is that gimbals tend to have a more robotic look to them, because it's not just weights and counterweights like a glide cam, but it's actual motors and electronics keeping this thing balanced. And because of that reason, it can tend to look more like a robot. Now, every new gimbal that comes out improves on this a little bit, but whenever you're using the joystick, it goes right back to looking like a robot. On top of that, the joystick is way too sensitive. And of course, you can change the speed of the joystick in your settings, but if you're walking with your gimbal and you want to pan slowly to the right, if you try to use the joystick, it's more than likely going to be too fast, or it'll stutter a little bit because you're trying to do this very slow movement with your thumb. The joystick can be useful when shooting quick action shots with fast movements, but with all other shots that need to be subtle or smoother, it just doesn't work. Surprisingly, the Zhiyun Crane has a much better joystick design by not having this massive joystick that sticks out of the gimbal, but by having just a small thumb pad, it allows you to make much smoother and subtle movements. But if you're wanting your camera to turn a certain way while walking, don't use the joysticks, just turn your wrists. If you turn the base of the gimbal, the camera will follow along also. So if you're walking one direction and you want to pan to the right, simply turn your wrist towards that direction and the camera will follow. Avoid that joystick and just make the subtle movement with your wrists.
Number 3 is to use a monopod. What you may not know is that the bottom of your gimbal is a place to screw in the tripod plate. Now, this can be used, of course, to just set it on the tripod and control the head from your phone or something like that, but it's even more amazing because you can put your gimbal on a monopod. Now, the weight of a gimbal can start to take a toll on your body after a few hours, so using a monopod can take a lot of the weight off, which still enables you to get smooth shots. But what I mostly use the monopod for is getting creative shots that you wouldn't be able to do without a gimbal. One is to fake a crane shot, since the gimbal head will always face the same direction. If you place your gimbal on the monopod, you can either raise it or lower it to create what looks like a crane. And people may think that we bought a $2,000 crane, hold the massive thing out there for this one specific shot, but we actually just placed our gimbal on a monopod. Now, you can do a crane shot, go through tight places like a car window. The possibilities are endless, and all you have to do is put your gimbal on a giant pole. So don't throw away that monopod just yet. Use it to get some really unique and cinematic shots.
Tip number 4 is to shoot for the edit. One of the most popular and trendy things right now is transitions with a gimbal. And I mean, they are everywhere. But if you're wanting to do something similar, you'll need to plan it out. If you're wanting to do a whip pan transition, you're going to need to start your gimbal shot and then quickly pan to the left. Then the next gimbal shot, start with panning quickly to the left and then ease back into normal. And once in the edit, you can blend those shots together seamlessly because you planned it out beforehand. If you just decide to add a preset transition to any shot, it doesn't look nearly as good as if you planned it out beforehand and actually move the camera in the direction of the transition. Now, good thing is this can really be done in any way possible. If you know you'd like a cool transition, simply pan towards a direction and then do the same thing in a different location. You can do left to right, up and down, spin, or go diagonal. But of course, some of my favorite transitions are the creative ones where you take advantage of the gimbal and try something entirely unique. Swipes, reveals, whatever you'd like to try, make it unique and stand out from the competition. So I always say, shoot for the edit and film your gimbal shots with your transitions in mind.
Number 5 is to keep your setup light. My first gimbal was the Ronin M, which is a really large gimbal, but I tried to put as many accessories on it as possible to look more official to everyone watching me. So I had a large monitor, a shotgun mic, and some other random things to give the illusion of looking like I was a professional filmmaker, but it didn't just weigh my setup down to where the point was miserable to hold for a long period of time, but it also hindered me from getting better shots. So if you have your gimbal set up, don't put large monitors on top of your camera. Not only is it going to weigh down the gimbal significantly, it will also make your shot less smooth because the motors have to work extra hard with the added weight. Now, if you absolutely need to have a microphone on the top of your stabilizer for audio, then do so. But just know that all the extra weight that is on top of it is going to make your shot a little bit worse. Now, there were a few times I remember putting a microphone or monitor on my gimbal because I thought I needed it, and looking back at the shots, they weren't as smooth as they could have been because of the added extra weight. So whenever the motors have to work harder, it can limit how well they can adjust to quick movements, which result in a less cinematic shot. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, well, I need this monitor or I need this microphone. And yes, you may for a few shots, but most of the time you don't. If you absolutely do need the microphone, just leave it on there for the shots you need and take it off when you don't need it, and you'll be surprised how much better your shots will look.
Number 6 is the way you walk. Now, the reason we're making a point about this is because when people ask us why their footage isn't smooth, it's mostly because they're walking like they're just strolling down the street. And people say, oh, I know that we have to walk like that for a glide cam, but a gimbal is different. It's motorized and it takes all those walking movements out. And that, of course, is a lie. You operate a gimbal the same way you do a glide cam. When you walk, you bend your knees and you walk like your lower half is completely separate from your upper half. Let your legs absorb everything without letting it get to your upper half. The reason behind this is for all of those bumps and shakes that you see in shaky footage, they are always caused from your legs up into your arms, and that is why you need to separate the two and absorb everything in your legs. This is especially useful when moving quickly or running, since you tend to have a lot more movement in your shots. Your legs are a lot farther away from your camera than your arms are, which will result in your gimbal receiving less shake, which results in a much smoother shot. It definitely takes some practice physically and mentally because squatting for a long period of time is strenuous on your quads, but mentally, you also have to train yourself to naturally squat whenever you walk because you aren't used to doing that. And the best way to do this is by walking up and down your driveway with your gimbal. I know it sounds weird and you'll probably get some really strange looks from people passing by, but it takes practice to get to the point where it's ingrained in your memory. Someone once told me that the stupider you look, the better your shots will be, and nothing has ever been more true.
And finally, number 7 is to take advantage of the advantages. You don't want to pay hundreds of dollars for a tool that can only do one thing. And I see so many people using their gimbal to the extent that they would just use a glide cam. They push in, pull out, parallax, tracking, etc. But the gimbal can do so many unique things that a glide cam cannot do. For example, low mode is amazing with the gimbal. You can put your camera down to the ground in just seconds. And this shot's amazing to use whenever following someone low to the ground or getting detail shots. Trying to do this with the glide cam was super difficult since you have to turn it upside down to even get that low mode Also, the barrel roll has an amazing feature that was almost impossible for the everyday filmmaker to capture years ago. Now, there isn't a certain use for this type of shot, but it can just add to the creativity of your edit. Maybe you want to give a different angle of someone walking, or the camera pushing through a car window while rotating, or even doing a really cool speed ramp or transition. The possibilities are endless. You could even do a handoff with your stabilizer to someone to get a really cool cinematic shot. Again, up until recently, these movements were virtually impossible without a Hollywood budget, but now it's easy and simple, and yet filmmakers are still not doing it. They are still sticking to the simple movements that they have been doing for years and are not standing out from the competition. The list goes on, so no matter what gimbal you have, learn all the advantages that it offers and make yourself stand out from the competition.
Now, we're only scratching the surface when it comes to gimbals, cinematography, composition, editing, and all of the above, and there is so much more to learn in order to take your projects to the next level, and that's why we created our online film academy called Tomorrow's Filmmakers to teach you exactly that. If you'd like to join thousands of other filmmakers who are already part of our academy, you can click the link below to learn more. Inside, we teach every single filmmaking skill that you need to succeed in your filmmaking career, with over 1,000 training videos and over 100 hours of content taught by filmmaking professionals in their craft, all the way from the narrative side like directing, acting, cinematography, composing, and into the business side as well, like real estate, weddings, music videos, and so much more. We've helped so many students quit their jobs, make a full-time living, and even some become award-winning filmmakers. We also just launched our brand new course called 90 Day Filmmaker, where we hold your hand and walk you through your filmmaking career on how to go from zero to a full-time filmmaker in just 90 days. Our students are already quitting their jobs and doubling their clients in less than a month inside 90 Day Filmmaker. So if you'd like to learn all the skills you need to succeed, check out our full academy at tomorrowsfilmmakers.com. And if you'd like to take your skills and make a full-time living in only 90 days, check out our course 90dayfilmmaker.com. And you can also check out our free 1-hour filmmaking training, where I share with you my 10 filmmaking secrets that nobody is telling you. Tens of thousands have already watched this webinar, and some have even said that it has been more valuable to them than their entire 4-year degree at film school. All the links to these will be in the notes below.
Thank you guys for watching our top gimbal tips and tricks video. Make sure that you click the subscribe button, and also go ahead and click the bell button as well, so you can be updated every time we post a new video. And if you have any questions for me, feel free to shoot me an email at emmaus@tomorrowsfilmmakers.com.
And if you have any questions for me, you can also send me an email at justice@tomorrowsfilmmakers.com. Thanks so much for watching another episode of Tomorrow's Filmmakers, where we give you all the skills that you need to succeed.